Welcome to this session, 7 signs that you're the ideal candidate for becoming a legal nurse consultant. I know many of you who are interested in legal nurse consulting are curious, like, what is it lawyers look for? And that's why I've invited 2 veteran certified legal nurse consultants to join me in this session. And I'd like to introduce you to both Suzanne Arragg and Dorene Goldstein. And so, Suzanne, I'm going to start with you. Can you describe what you think is the ideal candidate for becoming a certified legal nurse consultant?
It's a loaded question, Vicki. I think there's a lot of qualities that can make us as nurses ideal candidates for becoming a certified legal nurse consultant. First of all, I think that you need to be passionate. I think secondly, committed. And third, you need to be comfortable in your nursing practice. I think all of those qualities will drive and propel your ability to be successful. And the word successful means a lot of different things, right? It doesn't have to be one definition. So your success is driven based upon the qualities that you hold and how you propel those forward in your study and education, and then ultimately business as a legal nurse consultant.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'm so happy to hear you say that, success varies for each person, because that's so true. And I've seen consultants, like some, they go for it. They're very ambitious. They've got 10 subcontractors working for them. I've seen others who are like, you know what? I started my business to have a life, and I want to have more balance in my life. And so they decide to keep it contained. And so both people are successful, just successful on their own terms, so to speak. All right. So Dorene, it's always harder to come second, right? Because now you've got to add on to what Suzanne said. So she already said passionate, committed, and comfortable in your expertise. And the challenge is to come up with 7 signs.
So, wow, 7 signs. Okay. Motivated is a huge one. I think as long as you are motivated to do something different, then you can certainly succeed. Another one would be eager to learn, be a student. You have to be somebody who likes to learn things. And I think as nurses, we're so used to that. Policies are always changing. So we're always learning. Educators, while we're talking about learning, we're educators also. And one more, my goodness, loving working for yourself would be something that I would say too. It's different. Working from home is very different than working in a hospital. And you have the freedom, like Vicki said, success is measured differently. And for me, it's having the freedom to work when I want. So that's a big, big thing for me.
Yeah, thank you. There's so many, just 2 that kind of come to mind for me is really strong communicators. Like, I've often noticed that the successful consultants are both very strong verbally in their communication with attorneys, and they're very strong in communicating and writing. And of course, the CLNC certification program, that's a big part of what the program is about, is how to communicate your opinions to these attorneys. And in mind with that, being also able to not only communicate your opinions, but communicate who you are. Again, I've been around so many consultants with attorneys, and the ones that seem to be the most successful, they kind of understand how they fit into that attorney's world. They understand how to translate to the attorney why their expertise is valuable. So I think that those are some additional ones. But again, just because I came up with the number 7 doesn't mean it's a magical number. There's many more, I think, traits that successful consultants have. But I think one of the things you probably picked up is that it's not necessarily about years of experience or just your knowledge. There's a lot of other factors that go into it. Now, Suzanne, you've been at this for what, 22 years now? And
yes.
you can go all the way back to 22 years ago. Did you know when you first started that you were an ideal candidate for attorneys?
No, truthfully, no. I had no idea. I was looking at this as just a way to supplement my income, still work full time, committed to that employer relationship. I had no idea. In fact, when I was in the course and taking all the modules, I was so overwhelmed. I thought to myself, I don't know. I just don't know. But I laugh now, but I was uncertain. But I think all the qualities that, we just discussed about being committed, being a good communicator, having that drive, having all of those things, help me to just keep going and not be overwhelmed by all the information that I was supposed to learn in those 6 days.
Thank you. And Dorene, you've worked with attorneys both like in your area in Cape Cod, kind of a small community. I think one attorney you work with probably works by himself, right?
Yes.
And then you've also worked with very large organizations that have hundreds of law firms. And I'm sure you've heard from attorneys that you've worked with, both big and small, what they think an ideal candidate is. What kind of comments have you heard from the attorneys themselves?
One of the biggest compliments I got, Vicki, from one of the local attorneys was when he told me that he needed my brains. As nurses, I feel like a lot of times we think we're second fiddle to the doctors. The doctors know more than we do. And when in fact, it's our brains. They want to know what really happens in the hospital, not what happens in textbooks. What happens during a code, what happens during a precipitous delivery. So just our knowledge of the inner workings was something that is huge. They like that part of it. And they like the fact that we don't know everything. If I don't know something, I know how I can find it, and I'm honest. And I say, gee, that's a great question. I'll get back to you. So that was something that, two of the big aspects that they really like in my consulting practice.
Thank you. How about you, Suzanne?
I have to emulate what Dorene had said. It was definitely my first client, and my first case was all about the knowledge I could bring from the clinical side and the regulatory side. They had no idea that there was such regulations that governed skilled nursing facilities. And I'm thinking to myself, wait, you're a lawyer, aren't you supposed to know the law? In my naiveness, right? Well, of course they knew the law, but they didn't know specific to the guidances and the regulations governing skilled nursing, both state and federal. And so I was able to bring, it was one of the comments that on my CV I had that the attorney had said, expertise in Title 22. Now, what's that? And so I'm like, yeah, at first I thought Dorene is saying I'm the second fiddle to this attorney, but then I quickly, said, okay, well, I just answered the question. I walked out with my first case after that first interview. So I just have to say that that's what they really are after. We know how to navigate the healthcare system better than our physician counterparts, right? So I think they really value that, and we can create the roadmap, clinical roadmap for the defense or the prosecution of their cases.
Yeah, my first attorney client, I remember him saying to me that when he went into deposition or went into trial, he wanted to know more about nursing or medicine than that nurse or doctor that he was either deposing or cross-examining. And so I think you're right on target in terms of what they feel like they need from you in the case. Dorene, can an RN improve oneself to become an ideal candidate, or is it pretty much predetermined? In other words, you are who you are, and that's that.
Like Suzanne said in the first question, that's a loaded question. I can't answer that yes or no.
Copycat.
I think certain people are like meant to do this. You know, that being said, I think anybody who is a nurse can do this. So it's, you know, I know I'm kind of going around with the question you asked, but it's just something that is born into us nurses. As nurses, we're educators. As nurses, we explain. How many times have you explained to a patient that you're going to put an IV in and how you're going to do it, or how to give their own insulin? And that's actually what you're doing with the attorneys, is you're explaining and you're teaching. And it's not something that you don't know, it's something that you know. So you're selling your experience, you're not selling a product. And I think it's a lot easier for us that way to say, okay, yeah, let me explain what happened. And when they look at you and smile and say, oh my gosh, now I get it, it just gives you that confidence.
If we assume that it's a little bit of both, right? I mean, as you said, I've been in situations where I've met an RN and I think, oh, okay, that RN is going to be successful. You
Yes.
just can kind of see it in their eyes. And then likewise, I've been surprised, right, by someone that maybe when I first met them, I wasn't expecting them to excel. And so it's probably a little bit of both. Suzanne, anybody listening, what can they do right now to really better qualify themselves to become a certified legal nurse consultant?
Okay, I think that you really have to do some self-examination. Number one, think about and write it down. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Okay, you write those things down, those qualities. What makes you good in your nursing job that you're doing right now? Where is an area of weakness? And so by starting your self-examination, I think that's the very first step. Because if you have, and then along with that, consider what your confidence level is and what your fears are. Because what I have found in mentoring many legal nurse consultants and nurses who are interested in this career is it's fear. Well, I don't know. It's, again, as you keep circling back, you know, to what has been said earlier. We as nurses, we think, oh, well, we're just nurses, you know, oh, those doctors, you know, and we tend not to, at least in the beginning of our careers, really own our own area of expertise. So thinking about those fears. So working on, you know, and doing a real honest self-evaluation of your skill set, of your confidences, of your fears will help you, and then begin that work will help you gain further confidence. Or just reaffirm what you already know, like you're going to be great at this career path. So to me, that's the first step.
Just to add on to that a little bit, I think also giving yourself credit for who you are, because I will tell you, I've been surrounded by groups of nurses and I'm just myself so impressed, right? It's like, I'm thinking, what an amazing group of registered nurses. But then when I talk to nurses individually, you know, I've had people come to me and go, I've got 25 years of experience, is that enough? And I'll be like, no, come back, you know, in a couple of years, kind of jokingly. And so I think sometimes nurses take their own knowledge base for granted and they need to understand who they are. So it's always good to understand our weaknesses, but over the years, I've kind of noticed that if anything, I think RNs don't understand their strengths as much as they should. And I love that you mentioned the fear, right? Like owning the fear, putting yourself out there, even when you're afraid. I think that's something that we all need to do in any endeavor that we wish to pursue.
Can I just elaborate just one moment further? I think, in fact, yesterday I was just speaking to and mentoring a CLNC, and, you know, she had stellar nursing experience, but every time I was speaking in conversation with her, she was self-doubting. And I said to her, why do you keep putting yourself down? And I hear this a lot. I mean, you know, I'm guilty of it too. You know, I will do it just as well. So I'm not really finger pointing, but I find that quality because we're humble servants of healthcare, right? We're patient advocates. And I think we tend to put others first, of course, before ourselves. But own your expertise and stand up tall and That's what the attorneys don't have, unless of course you're working with a nurse attorney. That's a separate and apart, but there's not a lot of those. So I just kind of wanted to embellish what you said because I think it's so true.
Thank you, Suzanne. So our success is so much the result of the intentions that we set, the decisions that we make, the actions we take. Dorene, talk to me about some of those intentions and decisions and actions when you first started that were pivotal to your success.
The biggest one, Vicki, is I immediately set the intention that I was going to make this work. There was no what if, it was, nope, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it work. So I treated it seriously. I treated it like a business. I sat down with my family. I had 3 young kids at the time. I too had been practicing for 20 years. And I sat down with them and said, listen, this is what I'm going to do. And made a calendar. And on the days that I marketed, I marked it out. Like I am working from 10 to 12. I put a door on my office with a window so they can see me. If they were killing each other out there, I could see them. And I treated it seriously. I did one step every day. I took what you said seriously and I went for it.
Thank you. Suzanne, how about you?
I continued to follow up and I intentionally went after that first attorney client. Every 10 days, I was making a call and I got to know the legal secretary on a first name basis, talking about life even, and that took 6 weeks plus. And the attorney was in trial. And so there was a good reason why I wasn't getting a call back. But by the 6th call that I made, she's like, Suzanne, I'm putting your CV on the top of the stack because you've been so good at following up. I'll make sure he calls you for an appointment. So, I think the follow-up is very intentional and it needs to be intentional. The other thing is, I examined my writing skills because I knew I was never a really strong writer. So I knew I was going to need that because the course tells us we're going to either do brief reports, we're going to do comprehensive reports, we're going to conduct research. And so honing those skills was really important. So I intentionally set those as marks for myself. And I was really open to criticism. And so I had someone really evaluate and teach me grammar all over again, because as nurses, we love soap notes and charting and phrases, right? So that was really, really important for me to improve my writing skills. And I didn't listen to family members and other nurses who were naysayers. So I think what if, the what ifs, don't listen to the what ifs. So that was another intentional goal that I set for myself as well.
Thank you. That's some great advice you just gave. So Dorene, as you said, you've been doing this for 20 years also, and you're obviously different today than you were when you first started. How would you say you've grown as a CLNC consultant? And how does that make you even more ideal to these attorneys that you're consulting with?
Definitely my confidence, Vicki. When I started, like Suzanne said about self-doubt, I would market to only a small firm because I thought, oh my gosh, I can't, it's overwhelming to market to somebody with 5 or 10 or 20 lawyers, so my confidence as it grew and I learned what works for me and what doesn't work for me. I feel like it was obvious loving what you do and being confident, then the attorneys see it also. When you exude that confidence, when you're speaking with somebody, then they see it too and they're going to trust you. It's that level of trust, and just think about it. The very first time I spoke with an attorney about my specialty is labor and delivery, a labor and delivery case. And I started speaking about just everything that happened with a shoulder dystocia and this and that. I just felt like I got this, I really do understand what's happening and I got this. So definitely my confidence has grown amongst other things, but the biggest is confidence.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Ditto.
Copycat.
I mean, I think what happens, with validation, each and every case, each and every conversation, and really, I become even a better listener because as much as we as nurses like to educate, we also need to be learners, and students of our art. And our art, whether it's clinical or legal nurse consulting, and garnering, further education and certificates or just continuing education is really important. And I think that my listening skills, listening to what the attorneys want, hearing them, and digesting what I'm hearing, using those good listening skills has improved, because the more I work with attorneys, the more I learn. I don't stop learning ever. So I think my growth is in my commitment to ongoing education and really understanding the litigation process and how what nursing level of expertise and further education I need to support the litigation role, and what the attorneys are constantly learning and changing in how they litigate different cases as well, because the laws and the statutes are always changing as well. So as much as I don't have to know all the specifics, I have to understand and hear from them what is changing so that I can better be a support as part of the litigation team.
One thing I'm always impressed about with you is, even though your expertise is long-term care, and I know you eat, sleep, drink, and breathe it, you still take on those cases outside of your area, which does really prove that, yes, you really see yourself as a student for life, always learning. And I admire that a lot about you, because you have enough experience in long-term care that you can really just be comfortable and sit back and do nothing but those kinds of cases. But you don't. I mean, you take on some huge kind of stuff that is a little bit or way outside of your comfort zone. And I truly respect that about you. So being an ideal candidate, I know both of you said it starts with your experience. It also starts with a state of mind, right? Because you can have, as I said, you can put two people side by side with the same exact experience. One is confident and one is not, right? And so, Dorene, how did you convince yourself that you had what it took to approach these attorneys?
I did something that I was petrified to do. I offered to testify. I offered to testify in a labor and delivery case. And I put myself out there. To me, I thought, oh my gosh, when I took this certification program, that was one of the things that I was most afraid of, being on the stand. It's like that public speaking all over again. Like, how am I ever going to do this? But I did. I could support the side that the attorney gave me, and I testified in a medical malpractice case. And it just gave me that confidence that, you know what, I do know what I'm talking about. I am the expert in the standard of care, and I have what it takes to help these attorneys. And once I got that, then I think I just got like more hungry, like, okay, I want more. I want something different. I want to expand. And now I work for a product liability personal injury case where people get injured in elevators and escalators. So while my experience is labor and delivery, I still am able to work on orthopedic cases behind the scenes. So definitely it was something that scared the heck out of me, but I did it.
And I know that's one of your biggest clients now, right?
Yes. And in fact, it took 9 months to get that attorney, like Suzanne said, the persistence. From the minute I had the name of somebody to call, I was just persistent, and I kept calling and following up. And before I knew it, I was in front of, 20 council members and paralegals and giving my spiel. And now I work for them. It's been, I think, about 10 or 12 years I've worked for them.
So sometimes it's convincing yourself you're the right person. And sometimes it's saying, you know what, even if I'm not, I'm going for it anyway, right? And then you find out, yeah, I can be the right person. And I know both of you subcontract, especially if something's outside of your expertise. And so anyone listening, do keep in mind that if you feel like, I want to do a variety of cases, but I also don't want to be in a total state of discomfort, you can always subcontract with other certified legal nurse consultants. Suzanne, has your view of yourself changed over the years?
Sure. Yeah. Again, that confidence level and has definitely changed. I think the validation I had from my attorney clients and then my commitment to learning just propelled that forward. Absolutely. I mean, one of the best pieces of advice that I was given by my first attorney client, he said, take this case home, sit on the couch, curl up with a blanket, and read it like it's a good mystery novel. And that resonates with me even today. And that advice, and I took it, I took that advice, right? And once I showed that I had done that, he gave me all his cases. I had to hire employees within 6 months of starting to work for him. So I didn't have enough support. So if you heed the advice and the little pearls that attorneys give you along your journey as a CLNC, you are just going to continue to build your confidence, and and in turn, that just validates that you know what you're doing, no matter if it's in an area of expertise or not. Like Dorene said, she's an L&D nurse. She took on the PI cases and, the workman's comp cases. You can do it. And so when you receive that validation by getting more cases, I was fortunate. My client is a national law firm. So as Vicki mentioned earlier, you can have clients that have offices all over, the US or even internationally. Some of us I know have international clients, but I have a client that they have offices all over the 50 states. So my name got passed around, and that's why I have varied types of cases that I work on. I do maritime cases. I do, product liability cases, mass tort, in addition to in my area of expertise. But I think if you don't be uncertain, if you have a varied a wide variety of nursing expertise in your career, that's a good thing. Bottom line, your assessment skills are your assessment skills. Nursing process 101, right? So just own that and hold that true to yourself as you begin this journey.
Dorene, did the certification program help prepare you in a more confident way to step out and approach attorneys?
Absolutely. It kind of, talking back to what Suzanne said, it gave me the confidence, and it helped me realize that we don't have to know the law. Your nursing part of it. Yes, it helps to know the elements of a lawsuit and that sort of thing. But, as long as you are confident in what you teach to the attorney in your nursing background, you can be as successful as you want at this. I find that you say what changed for you. In me, it's to realize that I can do anything I put my mind to, as far as this business goes. And it takes you in different ways. And just be open to it, and be open to what the attorneys have to tell you, and take the criticism. Definitely take the criticism. I have learned a lot from these attorneys, and a lot of them are great friends now. So it's been wonderful.
How about you, Suzanne?
Well, gosh, absolutely. The course prepares us, to be successful in this path. And as much as it was overwhelming for me when I took the course, I still can utilize that curriculum as a guide. It's a living, breathing tool. And so the Institute is, always been there for me. And I, appreciate that. And I think that's what keeps me on track. So absolutely the course does live on, in my practice of 22 years. And that together with the constant communication with my attorneys and learning all the time definitely that's what's driven my success and kept my business alive.
And I know also the mentoring makes such a difference. Both of you are mentors today. And I know that you personally have experience with making such a huge difference, especially in a beginner's life. But it's not always a beginner. I've mentored people that have been in the business for a long time, and sometimes one word of advice can make such a difference in the next path for that consultant.
Mhm.
And so the Institute is committed to success, and I think that's important. And I know both of you have lived it. And I personally have noticed how much you guys care about their success as well. All right, just to kind of summarize some of the qualities that Suzanne and Dorene mentioned throughout this session. Normally, the people that they think are ideal, someone who's passionate, committed, comfortable with their expertise, self-motivated, a great communicator, eager to learn, what I think of as a student for life, an educator to the attorney, and someone who has that ability to translate to the attorney why and how their experience is beneficial. You get to decide if you're the ideal candidate, and now that you've participated in this session, you'll be able to make that decision for yourself. Thank you so much for joining us in this session today.